So, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back, everyone. I hope you enjoyed your lunch break. From a moderator's point of view and with many years of experience, I can say that this tends to be the most challenging session in any program, because as all of you digest your meals, we have to sort of entertain you here, but I'm looking forward to hearing from many of you in this session, and I hope that you will help us to make this session as interactive and engaging as possible. Now, as I said, after a very rich and interesting discussion this morning, we will now focus on something that is very, very important, namely achieving impact through innovative funding models. We already heard much about it this morning, whether it be regional funds, Horizon 2020. We heard about the Energy KIC, which has shareholders which put in €1 billion each, etc. So I think that we will have a good discussion about what is the right kind of mix, and also what is a good return on investment. Now, with that, let me go directly to our first speaker this morning, or this afternoon, and this is Jari Ahola, Head of Unit for Services and Finance at the EIT, responsible for the administration and finances of the Institute. Now, as someone who runs an organization, as someone who is also an entrepreneur, I know that administration and finances are sort of at the heart of every successful organization. So I really think, Jari, you've done a very good job in the last couple of years. You have 15 years of experience from your previous job at the VTT Technical Research Center of Finland, and you specialize in R&D management and research. Now we're very eager to hear your thoughts about innovative funding models. The rule is the same, 7 minutes. I will keep close track, and the floor is yours.
Thank you. Challenging slot after the lunch, so I'll just say the magic word, money. So everyone is woke up now. I'll just set the general outline of the finance to give you an idea what the EIT funding is about and what it's not about. So from this morning's presentations, I picked up a very good line from Mr. Sigan. It's the last mile of the innovation development life cycle. So you probably are familiar with many other European funding instruments covering basic research or applied research, but the EIT funding is not for that. So this funding model is for catalyzing the innovation and increasing the innovation capacity at the European level. The key concept here is leverage. It's an investment. So for every euro we invest on the KICs, we expect 3 to 4 times leverage coming from the KICs. So taking the ideas to projects and the lab ideas going to the market, and the students to the entrepreneurs. This is the framework that the funding is going through. And it's limited to the maximum of 25% of the overall budget of the KIC. And there are some certain definitions of what can be covered by this funding, and I believe I will be sharing these experiences coming from my fellow panelists of the KICs, that what can be covered and what not. And so far, the track record on this leverage has been over 1 to 5, that about 81% of the overall budget of the KICs has been coming from other sources than EIT's funding. So here's a simple graph pointing this out over the past years. Of course, 2013 is ongoing. And the first column on the right is the EIT grant that has been awarded to the KICs. The second bar is the amount of money coming from KIC partners. And the third one is the national or regional or private funding of the KICs overall budget. And the second last bar is other EU but non-EIT funding. And the remaining small one is other sources. So this pretty well demonstrates the leverage of the EIT's funding. But this is not a done deal for the KICs in that sense that even though the framework partnership agreement is for 7 years, it doesn't mean that you automatically get your share each year. You have to compete for part of this funding, and you also have to demonstrate that you are performing up to the expectations as set by the business plans of the KICs. So the financial contribution is decided on an annual basis. It's decided by the governing board of the EIT, and it's based on the past performance, the future plans, that's the business plan, and the level of co-financing from other sources that the KICs have been able to attract. And the difference here is that the EIT is not a traditional grant giver to projects or individual partners rather than only to the KIC legal entity. So the EIT is committed to fund the KICs over the period of 7 years, and the KICs have to be committed to deliver as per to the agreed results and outputs. Okay, thank you.
Really the award here for, I think, 4 to 5 minutes, so well done. I actually, as you were speaking, some things were going through my mind. I mean, you mentioned all the different sources of funding. How much of that would you estimate is private sector funding, actually? Because it was, in your chart, it was together the national and regional.
Well, I think I have to turn to my fellow panelists on the KICs to give the private funding figures.
Approximately.
Depends on the year.
30 or 40%. That's not bad, because as we all know, companies have a really hard time parting with their money, and so well done is what I want to say. I think that this is all very interesting, and I have to believe it also makes the projects more sustainable. I once sat on a jury that was convened by DG Regional Policy, and almost all of those projects, they were 80 or 90% funded by the European Commission. And one of the things we were supposed to evaluate them on was sustainability, because almost all of these projects, they simply collapsed after the funding was withdrawn. But with 25% investment, it strikes me that even if you withheld your funding, these projects could go on. So well done is what I want to say. Now, our next speaker is Richard Templer, Director of Innovation at the Grantham Institute for Climate Change and Director of the UK Co-Location Centre of the Climate KIC. Sounds very impressive and important. Now, Richard, in 2000, you founded the Institute of Chemical Biology at Imperial College London, and you have brought this very important entrepreneurial experience with you to the Climate KIC. So what are your thoughts about sort of the comparative advantage that the KICs might have, and what have you learned sort of in this experience vis-a-vis your previous experience as an entrepreneur? Go ahead, 7 minutes.
Oh boy, I'm never going to survive the flattery of that. So I hope you're not expecting something as wonderful as the introduction. Actually, I'm one of the people who was also a veteran. And actually, the reason I'm a veteran of this is because of the title of this session. The innovative funding model, for me, was this is the first time the EU was going to try something very different. It was going to try and behave like a seed investor. It was going to invest in at the time, and it passed that it was going to be in three KICs. And that investment was to actually not to do one thing, but to do two things. And I think we tend to focus on one and forget about the second, which I think I'm going to try and cover here. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about the second. So what's the first one? Well, the first one is they're going to be seed investors in innovation pipelines. So if I had to describe the climate KIC, I'd say the climate KIC is an innovation pipeline for climate change mitigation and adaptation, supported by trained individuals and backed up by acceleration through business development. That's what it is. That all sounds absolutely hunky-dory, sounds fine. But there's this second thing that we're being asked to do. You see, Europe hasn't been terribly good at innovation over the past half century. Alex showed the charts. It's really quite shaming that we haven't produced more high-growth companies over a period of 50 years. You would have thought we would have been able to do something about that. So the second part is an experiment in trying to make Europe more innovative and entrepreneurial again. And that is the part of the game that I found the most challenging and interesting. So what is it that funding allows us to do, which is, if you like, the experiment? And by the way, this is a generic statement. I think this is true for all of the KICs. So I think the first thing it does is embeds a pipeline into a community. And that has I'll go back to that, has a lot of effects, very profound effects on what you can do, which I think is unusual. In other words, it's the USP of what the seed funding was for. The second part is that it widens opportunities for the partners. So if you're asking why is it that partners will put up with the tensions that we talked about, they're real, put up with putting in large slices of money, I would say it's because they want to widen the opportunities they have in the space that I'm in, a rather unusual space, a space where we have dysfunctional or non-existent markets, and they want to be able to do something in that area. So this seed funding allows them to do that. I'm going to give you, we have KPIs, all right? Key performance indicators, we have to, in order to manage ourselves and to satisfy our angel investors, if you like. But actually, the stories of what happens, I think, are more profound. They tell you how things work. So I'm going to tell you, it's actually a conglomeration of a bunch of stories about how embedding a pipeline into a community works and why it's so good. So we've got a number of SMEs and that we've brought into the KIC family, and we brought them in to address challenges that have been set by our large corporates and by the cities and the regions that we've got. Now, they come in with some idea, and we want to test them out. We try and pick the best ones, but it's difficult. And what we actually can do, what we found happens in quite a lot of them, is that they need some particular measurement made on their technology, which might be quite specific and technical, but they also want, if it turns out that their technology is good, they want a great big sort of certification check mark. And that's what the community can do. If your community is world class, it can give them, if they're good enough, it can give them this check mark, and it makes a huge difference to their marketability, how interesting they look to other investors. I won't say everything, I'll be happy to talk about it later, but the other thing that we've done is we've given them business advice. So those that, if you like, go through the technical checkpoint, we can start giving them business development advice, and we've got people who work with us who are serial entrepreneurs, come out of Silicon Valley, who really look at their companies and tell them what's good, what's not good, and what they need to concentrate on. We can also find markets for them. So Ian showed you the Climate Market Accelerator. One of the things that he was referring to is actually a business which doesn't do innovation itself, but has a whole bunch of targets that it needs to hit, and it doesn't know how to do it. So we've been into the company, we've given them a SWOT analysis on their climate change performance, and then we've gone and done calls for them and brought in companies, brought in our own expertise from the partners to try and meet those challenges, and that leads to offers. So we've now got more than one company that has, if the pilots go well, actually, we've got a contract for you which is worth €250 million. And that means you've done something really worthwhile which a normal incubation can't do. And that's the experiment. And I'm finished.
And I'm speechless. Go ahead. $250 million or $250 million? I think I'm not the only one who's speechless. So this is
pilot has to work still. These are just putative markets if you're successful.
Okay, you know, you mentioned the EU as a seed investor, and I've never thought of the EU as a seed investor. But just explain to me in 30 seconds, how's the EU as a seed investor different from an angel investor? Do you give more time? You have more societal goals in mind?
Yeah, I mean, there are lots of differences. One of them is it's harder for the EU. The other thing, though, is the length of time you've got. So, for example, my colleagues in the energy sector will tell you, you can shake your head if I got it wrong, it's between 10 and 15 years from the idea to actually implementation. Well, hey! And it's rather similar for other innovations. Of course, quite a few of our innovations will look rather similar to some of the things that are going on in the other two KICs. They take time, the patience to do it, the patience to go through technology readiness levels of around 4 all the way to 9. To do that and to keep committed is pretty difficult. So, the European Union has got a role to play. We both sides need to do something about learning how to do that. It's tough. It's tough.
Yeah, I see many people saying, that is tough, but all the more important. Now, I will turn my attention to Constant Smits, but I understand you want to be called Stan?
Correct.
Okay, so I will now turn my attention to Stan Smits, Chief Operations Officer at the EIT ICT Labs. Now, Stan, you were closely involved in the establishment of the ICT Labs, and you really contributed very much to the design and the management of the internal structure of your KIC. You recently, or you most previously, worked with Philips Healthcare, so you clearly have a unique and very valuable perspective on funding models, which were largely informed by your previous role in the private sector. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Thanks very much for the introduction. Just as a start, maybe good to go back to the construction of the KICs, which was, as was mentioned this morning, already 5-6 years ago. And at least from my perspective, a number of elements that were interesting in creating the KICs was comparing it to the US. And I happen to have worked a lot in the US. That there, when you have a startup, you have a homogeneous market of around 300 million people that you can address. So things are much easier than when you're in Europe, where if you do something in the Netherlands or in Belgium or whatever, you do not automatically have access to that whole market. So that's one of the important elements. Another very important element, and it was quite interesting to see an article in The Economist this weekend, is the fact that, and in fact it was in the context of the youth unemployment, which is currently running at around 25%, and there were basically mentioned 3 reasons. One, of course, is the economic downturn. The second reason, of course, is the labor regulations in Europe in particular. But the third reason was a mismatch between education and what is required in companies. And I believe that, that with the idea of the KIC, the concept of a KIC, we can address a number of those elements in the pipeline that we're working on. So now let's zoom into this specific topic for this session. And if I paraphrase the question, at least that I got, was, how does the funding from EIT leverage the funding from the partners? I think that came already up a number of times. And the way that we have approached that in ICT Labs is to work with a very simple model, because we found that the framework partnership agreement, the grant agreements, were using terminology that was not very, let's say, intuitive in understanding what we are doing. And the way that we describe it is that we say, well, we have as an objective that we want to bring a specific innovation to market. And what is very important if you want to bring an innovation to market is not to research it. It was mentioned this morning as well. EIT is not about doing research funding, but it is for other purposes. So what you have to identify first is things that have been researched, maybe in the past, maybe on the shelf, FP7 project results, a number of these things. And that is very much what we call the carrier, that is really the core of the activity, as it is called in EIT speak. And then we apply on this carrier what we call a catalyst. And the catalyst is basically the part that is leveraged by EIT. And in this particular topic, this particular example, what you see is that the catalyst can be partially funded by EIT and partially can be funded by the partners themselves. So this is already a pretty complex picture to explain to your partners. Now the problem is that if you want to bring that together, you have to combine all these elements. And I thought I had removed this build. Where you have the carrier activities, which are a number of different work packages, tasks split over different partners. You have the catalysts with different packages and tasks split over the different partners. And at least the way that we are constructed in EIT ICT Labs, the way that we work with this is that we have a kind of activity view which basically puts together the things as I just described, but at the same time are able to separate it out to the various partners so that they have a comprehensive view on what is expected from them. The way that we normally communicate about this internally is that we say, well, on the right-hand corner you see the picture again that I showed before. So the proposers of the activities, and in the next session we talk a little bit more about how this whole proposal section works in ICT Labs. But the proposer has to indicate the specific innovation objective. He has to identify the carrier activities that are there, the amounts of money that are associated with those carrier activities. He has to identify the catalysts, and again in the next session I will show a few of those catalysts that we are working with. He has to indicate the EIT funding, the non-EIT funding, the funding from the partners or other sources, the number of FTEs that is required, and then describe a number of very top-level elements like the contribution of the catalysts, the expected outcome of the overall activity, and the contribution to the KPIs, which is a mechanism that we use to measure the progress of the KICs at EIT level. We have always an illustrative picture that tries to convey what this particular activity is doing, and of course we have a list of the partners that are participating. So this is in a nutshell is what we call an activity, and that's composed of those elements. And that's where I want to stop at this moment and probably get more questions and discuss it further in the next session. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Stan, and in general to the panel, because you're all keeping under 7 minutes. So you're cutting me a little bit off guard. One thing that is still not clear to me after your 3 presentations, I understand raising additional funds, but is there a time horizon? Do you say, okay, we get our 25% investment from the EIT, and then we do what? We approach partners, we set ourselves, we're going to raise this amount of money in 1 year's time. Is it an ongoing fundraising effort? How? Walk me through it very briefly.
At least for ICT Labs, I don't know for the other KICs, but at least for ICT Labs, it's not so much fundraising. What it means is that we have, on a yearly basis, so-called call for proposals. And that is the moment that the partnership, for instance, last week we had a meeting 2 weeks ago, a meeting in Paris with about 400 participants from our partners. We have about 100 partners. And they come forward with proposals that at one end identify the carriers that I just described, so that will be what they want to bring in as their funding, and they have the ideas what they want to do with it and how they want to move forward. Now, I'm sure that in the later stage, in the last presentation, Willem will talk more about the way that we have organized this, because we want to avoid that it is all bottom-up, so there's a kind of top-down orchestration of that activity, but it is not that we have money and we go around. It's really that people know that these catalysts are available and they have to make proposals that fit in that particular framework.
So it's very demand-driven in that sense. That's That's very clever. Is it the same with the climate kick? Just briefly.
Yeah, well, in the creation of our business plan, we have to discern where the demand side pressures are and where our capacities for meeting those are. And that, I think that's really what Stan is saying. That naturally then moves you to the partners and to the contributions that they can make. So it's a construction which goes on pretty much every year.
Very interesting. But just walk me through this. If I'm an SME and I'm interested in ICT, how do I know where to go? How do I find it? I mean, the way the EU institutions do it, to sort of do a call, you know, or a tender or something. How does that work in practice?
We have a number of different partners at times. As you mentioned before, we have large companies, we have universities, research institutes. But the fourth group of partners, in particular in ICT, that are very well developed, are what we call ecosystems, which are organizations at country level that focus on connections with SMEs. And those partners help in bringing those SMEs to the table.
Very good, excellent. I'm very impressed, I have to say. Now, our last speaker in this session is Bart de Beer, Chief Finance Officer at the Energy KIC. Which, as we already heard, is structured as a commercial company. So I'm sure you have quite a bit of pressure on yourself. Let me just say a little bit about you, Bart. You worked for several leading multinational companies in the past, among them Cisco and Reed Elsevier, where you held senior financial roles. Now, how is it to manage the finances sort of in these larger companies versus a very innovative startup?
Well, it's extremely interesting. No, it's a challenge. So no slides for me, and well, to keep you all awake, we're talking about more money now. To continue on what our chairman already kind of hinted at, we are a commercial company. And why are we a commercial company? Well, and not so as the other KICs, why are we not an association? Because that's kind of a different setup. Well, in the beginning, I was not there, I'm not one of those veterans, I joined a bit later. And in the beginning, we kind of decided, or the group, the consortium decided that it would be beneficial for our commercial activities that we do foresee to have as much room to operate as possible. And that they foresaw was going to be with a limited company. So that's why we established this KIC Energy SE, a Société Européenne, which is basically a limited company. So we have shareholders. Today we have 27 shareholders, and they all have a in-kind contribution of a total contribution of about $1 million that was already referred to by our chairman. And part of that is cash. They're going to get an invoice from us, from KIC SE, of 100,000 euros every year. So that's our cash contribution. That's our income. So why do I kind of refer to that is because I would like to kind of continue on what Anne already referred to, sustainability. We as KIC SE, KIC Energy, we really are aiming for self-sustainability in a number of years. Not today, not tomorrow, not next week, but in years. So and that's what we're kind of all focusing on. So how do we get to self-sustainability? Well, we have about 8 identified income lines, revenue streams as we call them. So the first one is the cash contribution of our partners. The cash contribution of those 27 kind of formal partners, but also we have associate partners. We have a kind of a consortium of all kinds of partners, smaller, bigger ones. We have universities, we have research institutes, we have SMEs, a lot of SMEs. And they contribute to what they can. So we have the formal partners contributing about 100,000 euros a year, and we have our smaller partners that vary from 30,000 to 0. On top of that, and that's what our chairman hinted at, they also do an in-kind contribution. They contribute not in cash, but in probably kind of making available an office space, or staff, something like that. So that's what our total kind of combination of partner contributions means. Next to that, we also have the contributions of our partners, in the sense that they have in-kind contributions. I already referred to it. So we have these activities. Some of them are funded by the EIT. For the other part, the partners, they pay for that from their own pockets. They put money on the table. Yeah? So that's also some kind of revenue stream that we identify. So the third one, of course, is today the most important one, and that's the EIT funding stream that we have. Yeah? It accounts for about 92 to 93% of our expected revenue or expected income in 2013. Sorry. I'm already kind of thinking about the guidelines for 2014, so that's why I'm kind of so much into the 2014, but it is actually for 2013. So about a little bit over 10% or a little bit under 10% is coming from us, yeah, from the cash contributions of our partners. So that means the large chunk today is from the EIT. Other revenue streams that we have. Well, we are having, what we have is a kind of a creation, a KIC Energy Highway, yeah, where we have a kind of an incubator role, where we take an incubator role, where we nurture, breed ventures, new ventures. And in return for all our efforts, yeah, that we support the means of the EIT, we get an equity share. And so today, as we speak, we have about 12 ventures where we are entitled to equity, and that ranges between 5 to 15%. Yeah? So the idea is that we will hold an equity portfolio that we'll have to manage, yeah? But where is also kind of foreseeable exit, yeah? And we're going to monetize that foreseeable exit. Yeah? That could be an IPO, that would be great. You know, if we would kind of discover the next Facebook or the next Google, yeah, that would be great. Then sort of sustainability is easily done. But it might also take a bit longer. So you know how these things go with equity and new ventures. You win some, you lose some, and we just hope that you're going to put that you have enough in your basket to have some interesting exits. So that's on the equity portfolio. We also are looking for royalties. So we have a lot of innovation projects, just like all the other KICs. And what we do within these innovation projects, we also create foregrounds. Yeah? And that foreground, that is ideally also patented. Yeah? And if those patents are licensed to a third party, then we, KIC Energy, are entitled to a share of that. Yeah? So that's also something, you know, where we expect money from. Do we have that today? Not today, but we do definitely expect some of the first revenue to come next year. What else do we have? Oh, we have 8 lines, so I'm not there yet. Yeah. So, second of the, I think I'm number 5 now. That's the educational activities. So we have many educational activities. So you will probably hear today about our Master of Sciences, about our PhD programs, and there is a lot to do there as well. So you can think about kind of boosting our reputation in that sense, that kind of the quality mark of the KIC or the EIT Master of Science programs is become that dominant that we could kind of follow a same approach as what they already have, for instance, from MIT, yeah, where we have a lot of self-paying students. Yeah. Alternatively, you could think about MOOCs, yeah, massive online open courses. Yeah, that could also be kind of an interesting revenue stream. So we're definitely spending a lot of time also in developing the revenue streams in there. Yeah. So that was education. Yeah. So what else did I kind of miss so far? We have an interesting one in the donations. You know, we do expect also to get some donations. We're building this alumni foundation, really, where, again, in reference to what they are doing in the US, is to really create the game changers. Now, we're educating the game changers for the future. And in 10 to 15 years, these people could be the CFOs and the CXOs of our large international companies. Yeah? And MIT, for instance, I'm kind of using that example more often, they are getting large contributions, large donations from these people. So that's also kind of a revenue stream that we identify. Yeah? And last but not least, there is also the other services. Yeah? We have been approached already by parties, not in Europe, yeah, that are looking for kind of bespoke courses, yeah, or bespoke programs, where they really are reaching out to us to kind of to utilize the knowledge that we have kind of gained and to make something very special for them. Yeah? And they're willing to pay for that, yeah, top euros. So that's kind of that's also kind of a revenue stream that we definitely foresee. So that's kind of our way and our view on self-sustainability. Yeah? So we do not, we appreciate the EIT and all its efforts highly, because without them, this would not be possible, and we would not be standing here. But we're also having kind of a view outside and beyond that timeline of 2020, the kind of the timeline that we are talking about so often today. But we definitely have a view out there as well. So that was it.
Bart, I learned so much from these presentations. I learned that you consider in-kind contributions as real contributions. Only 10% of the 1 billion are real cash contributions. So help me understand, what's an in-kind contribution for your partners?
That's a very interesting definition. It's internally already within our kind of company, within our between our shareholders and partners, to a lot of confusion. So it goes probably a bit far to go into all the details there. But in general, it could mean that partners facilitate in rooms or in staff that they make available to the Cooking Energy without kind of being able to kind of pay, kind of put the cash on the table and reach in their pockets. They are willing to kind of share resources, and we consider that as in-kind contributions.
The labor hours.
Staff.
I'm not diminishing the importance of in-kind contributions, although the cash, I assume, is more.
You have to, no, I really would like to make a point here, because I think you have to be very careful, because what does it mean if you give cash to an organization is that they have to hire people. Now, what is the reason that you have a KIC is that you have a partnership with very well experienced people in all those areas, in universities, etc. So therefore, for KIC itself, is it much more effective in order to get access to those resources that the partners have, and have partners make those resources available, than just get a check.
Yeah, it's very interesting. I mean, what we're talking about is a new kind of management structure, essentially.
I mean,
it's much more collaborative. Go ahead.
It gets to the heart of really the not dilemma, but what a KIC is. A KIC is not a business as we understand it, Jim. It's a business-like entity, but which has these kind of fingers that reach out into all these, big partners and small partners, and that both borrows off of them to make the organisation run, but also enables those partners to find new modalities in which they can work. So I don't know whether there's anything else like it out there. There possibly is, but I don't know that.
It's innovation at work.
I think Diego wants to say there is, and he's going to tell us.
Do you want to jump in?
Oh, come on.
Okay. Well, you're very welcome. Okay. Before I go to the floor, let me ask you, Yannick, your role in all of this is what? To coordinate, to make sure that you keep these guys on their toes, they're not doing anything wrong, or what do you do?
Well, I guess the main task is to help them to understand and define within the KICs when they are planning the budgets, for instance, that what is the part and of the funding that can come from EIT, and what are the activities that it can cover. And of course, the rest remains on the KICs shoulders, because they have to be able to identify the other funding sources, and also where the different kinds of partners can pitch in. What is the financial contribution that they can bring into the KIC?
Very good, thank you. Questions, comments? Come on, this is a discussion about money. Okay. Go ahead and please introduce yourself and ask a very precise question. There you go.
Okay, my name is Stuart Anderson from Edinburgh University, and I wanted to ask whether you felt the KICs had a role in aligning various EU programs. So particularly I'm thinking about PCP, pre-commercial procurement, the PPPs, public-private partnerships, in the public sector, policy support programs, and the things that are going on there. And in particular, how you feel the KICs should relate to the innovation partnerships, because certainly in the next round, there's a whole parallel structure going on.
Yeah, I think that's a very good question because there are so many funding models already, and I think it's a fair point. How do you distinguish yourself vis-a-vis others? Now we're going to take a couple of questions before we come back to you, if we may. I saw a hand over here. This gentleman, please. You have to wait for the microphone. Sorry, there's a lady coming.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Terry Wilkins from the University of Leeds. I was particularly struck with the pilot or demonstrator example Richard presented. Sometimes, of course, that can take real cash, but once you come on through that process, it unlocks great goodies down the road. So my question is, where are you getting that cash for some of the bigger demonstrators and pilots now? How will you access the structures in Horizon 2020 to get more of that cash, to get that real proof of not only a principle that you can make something or operate something, but you de-risk it?
See, I told you, cash is the good stuff. Thank you. Anyone else? There's a gentleman, and by the way, no ladies. I think everyone so far has been a gentleman. Nothing against men, but I would like to see some ladies too. Go ahead and introduce yourself.
Thanks. Nolan at University of Limerick. My question is the funding that comes in, what is it primarily used for? Is it funding PhD students, postdoctoral researchers, equipment administrators, etc.?
I didn't hear.
What is the funding used for? What is that?
Oh.
Okay.
So maybe we go from behind, and I mean in this round of questions they weren't specifically to any of you, so you can answer whatever you want as long as you don't take more than 1 minute. Bart.
Let me start with the last one then. Well, if I can only speak for the Kick Energy, but I think we got slightly similar kind of setup. So where do we spend the money? Well, we basically spend the money on education programs, and that could be really Master of Science students, but also on PhDs. Where do we spend the money? Furthermore, we spend it on innovation projects. For Kick Energy, more than 50% today is spent at innovation projects. So that's a large chunk of our money, of the available funding. And then the third kind of cost category, funding category that we see is on the business creation. I kind of referred to it where I was standing, behind the cafe. Is that we have this Kick Energy highway where we nurture, where we breed these new ventures, and that costs money as well. So that's where the third part where we spend our money. And unfortunately, we cost a bit as well. So. That's the fourth part.
Well, I think everyone understands that. Stan, go ahead.
You want one question by one question, or all three at the same time?
Okay, if you can answer 3 questions in 1 minute.
Let's give it a try. In fact, the funding is used for, it's very similar to what Bart just said. As I said before, we get proposals from our partnership and what they want to do. They have to structure that around catalysts. So we have in the catalyst definitions the type of, let's say, funding that can be required. For instance, having somebody from a company work at another location with a university, so that's kind of mobility funding that goes in there. We have the funding for business development, for development of courses for the master and doctoral programs.
But how is it different? One question was about, okay, I understand, but how is this different from the many other EU projects?
Where it is different is the way that this whole concept is being worked out in with relation to this activity concept that is being used. And if I compare it with other EU programs, at least the ones that I know from FP7 are very much research oriented. This is really beyond that and tries to bring research to market.
Okay.
And I have not seen that many EU programs that really try to bring research to market. So
I agree, that's why I think the EIT was created in the first place.
Yeah. So that is where the big difference is.
Answer. You disagree?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. This gentleman needs the microphone.
He's supposed to do
Just
what
wait. Then we bring the microphone and then we come to you, Richard.
Hold your horses, Stuart. Hold your horses or hold your microphone.
Okay, here's the microphone.
Okay, I mean, I think things like PPP and PCP are definitely to do with trying to bring things closer to market. I mean, PCP is explicitly about that kind of thing.
But let me ask you the same question that you're asking. How is it different or is it not different?
Well, my question was actually whether the KICs felt that they should be aligning these things, yeah, because there are many different things, and the KICs are a large-scale trans-European organisation specialising in a particular domain, and these instruments cover many different domains, and the question is whether in that particular domain the KIC should be attempting to do some alignment, because I think it could play a very valuable role in that.
But what I hear you say is you think right now they are not doing this alignment.
Well, let me answer a few points there. Of course, it's impossible for all the KICs and to generalize, but definitely in the ICT space we try to align. In fact, we align very much with DG Connect. We are involved with memorandums of understanding for future internet PPP. We are involved with ITEA, Artemis as programs. So that's, and quite often ITEA and Artemis are really seen as carrier programs where we help them to bring them through. So definitely we have that alignment in the ICT space. I can't talk for all the other programs.
And I mean, I have to say, what I have heard here today is the KICs seem very open for collaboration, etc. So I think it's also up to maybe some of the other programs to approach the EIT and the KICs, you know, to generate these kind of synergies. Richard, if you could focus in particular on what the gentleman asked about these big demo projects.
Yeah, I also have an advantage because I was the Director of Education in private KICs, so I'm going to answer that one really quickly as well. So what the funds are used for, I think I can give you quite a technical answer, but I think I'll make a more understandable answer. It's to add value to stuff that exists already. In other words, universities already educate PhDs and master's students. The added value is to create innovators and entrepreneurs and intrapreneurs by working with universities in the education space. That sits inside the label EIT degrees, and then we're doing some other things I think all of us are, which is, if you like, education or training in the broader sense, which may involve working with companies, working with regions or whatever, to help them to become more innovative and entrepreneurial as well. And the words more innovative and entrepreneurial, I think they should just appear all the time when you're talking about what you're doing in this space. The cash for piloting is really very difficult. People are not parting with their money, people with money are not parting with it that readily. And in my opinion, and the opinion I think of most of my colleagues in the KIC should not be paying for all of the piloting. In other words, you need to see somebody external, somebody who's going to have to put their cash in to really prove that this is worthwhile. In other words, it has to, the further along the innovation pipeline you get, the more proof there has to be that the market wants it. And so, yes, so we do some work trying to get additional sponsors in. In the case of our KIC, I think we still got work to do. Last week we were having an intense, not to say fractious, discussion about how we might do it. So it's an incomplete story so far.
Very good. Yeah, you want to add something to that?
Well, the KICs role in other EU instruments. When I last time counted the funding instruments available, I ended up with number 23. So there definitely is overlap, and of course, depending on the thematic area you are working on, there might also be confusion in the focus. What these instruments are targeted for. But I'll say that for the KICs, the main thing is to understand what these funding instruments can provide, and then find a balance, for instance, in your legal entity, that what instruments different actors are eligible for to bring in the best you can get.
Very good, thank you. We have time for a second round of questions. I will shamelessly discriminate in favor of women.
That's one. That's one.
Where?
Over there.
Yes, so please.
Thank you. I'm from the National Innovation Office. My question would not be new for you. what would be your advice for future KICs?
Yeah, good. We're going to get to that. That's going to be the last round. We're going to keep doing that. So you can already think about it, but just don't answer it now. Before I come to you, I have a question. Is there anyone in the room who received funding from one of the KICs that they could not have gotten from other sources? Any entrepreneurs who got a venture off the ground because of this?
I guess we have no entrepreneurs here.
Are you? Okay.
No, I would answer.
Okay, so can you please come forward with the microphone? And please introduce yourself as well.
Thank you. Hello, I'm Anna Clara. I'm a member of the board of EIT. Now, EIT is quite different, and it is positioned within European framework of various instruments. And that's a particular focus also within the strategic innovation agenda. I mean, it's very important that each of the instruments that we have funded within with European funds has its own place. Now, this doesn't mean that you wouldn't find funding, for example, seed capital somewhere else, but you can do it better here. And that builds on a larger network, as was very well presented today already. You have a good network where it's possible to develop faster or maybe succeed faster. So basically, there is a particular case for EIT. And as regarding the earlier questions with, for example, how it is aligned with PPPs, well, it is in a way PPP. It's also public-private partnership. And as regards PCP, which is pre-commercial procurement, pre-commercial procurement is done by public. It's public pre-commercial procurement usually. So in this case, institutions which are organized as companies are not likely to have pre-commercial procurement calls. However, they do work, for example, as we heard already with the KIC climate. For example, they work developing the demand-side measures, which are at the end public procurement, and sometimes probably also pre-commercial. So basically, it is aligned in this case. But it is, as I say, there is a special case for EIT and the KICs.
Excellent. Thank you so much. There was a gentleman over there in the red jacket there. And please introduce yourself.
I didn't put on the red jacket. Frans Campos again from Wageningen University and Research Center from the Netherlands. I find the observation that in-kind contributions sometimes are better than cash contributions interesting. Because I understand the argument, I think, although it's also somewhat of a sour lemon argument, I think. But I want your comment on it because, in my view, there's a huge distinction between IP. If you have money and you hire somebody, your IP position is much better than if a partner performs the research on their own from their in-kind contribution. Can you comment on that?
Okay. Who wants to answer? That's actually an interesting contribution. What to do with the IP if it's through a collaborative part. Go ahead.
Right. Well, to a certain extent, you're absolutely correct. Yeah? So. But what we see is that kind of the in-kind contributions, well, at least the ones that we kind of initially referred to, are mainly on the operational expenditure. So there's not that much IP to be found. But of course there is in-kind contribution or co-funding, maybe that's a kind of better way of saying it, available in the other parts. Even if it's kind of, even the co-funding is part of CAVA. Now we become quite detailed and we're starting already kind of the vocabulary of the EIT very much. But okay, so if it's part of CAVA, then still it's going to be seen as IP derived from the KIC energy efforts. So, and still, then if there is going to be any foreground developed, then we could benefit from that. At least the construction that we as KIC in Energy have.
How is that with the other KICs? If you could bring the answer as well.
That's very similar. The co-funding together with the EIT funding is used for the foreground development, and we have special IT policies for the foreground.
Very good. Richard, you want to?
I'm not going to disagree with anything that was said. In fact, I'd say it's often, I personally think it's a stronger sign of a partner's, well, real partnership if they actually put time and effort in. And actually, it's a lot harder to do that if you're in a company than just to hand a check out, especially if it's not too big. And actually what I was going to say to you is that this territory was explored in a lot of detail by a thing called the Carbon Trust in the UK, where they looked at all forms of contribution that a set of partners would make in setting up a company under the funding of the Carbon Trust. And indeed, they didn't just include contributions, but they also included background IP and valuing that. So, you know, it's just the reality. If you want to create some commercial value out of combining your knowledge and know-how, you have to, as partners, come to an agreement about how you're going to do that. And your time, your facilities will be a part of that equation.
Okay, please go ahead. Where's the microphone? I have an innovation to propose to the organizers, which is for you ladies to stand in the front instead of the back. There you go.
Yeah, thank you.
But please introduce yourself again.
Chairman, KIC Energy. So I had the opportunity already this morning to explain a little bit about our activities. I would like to join the discussion here just for a second. Your question, who in the room here has got some support and you are looking for entrepreneurs? First of all, there are certainly no entrepreneurs here because all the audience here is looking for the new KICs and these are most academic institutions. First. Second, it is each entrepreneur who is, or each company who is participating in a KIC only for getting these 25% of co-funding is wrong. The motivation is wrong. You will be in this team and you have fast access to educate people, to innovative project ideas, and that's the benefit, and not the 25% or whatever percentage you get as a funding. And I think we right now fall back in the discussion a little bit because we fall apart into research funding, innovation funding, education funding. That's the wrong approach. KIC is different. We integrate. We discussed the whole morning about integration. We integrate and don't fall apart.
Very good. There's a young man. There's a young man up there who wants to say something. Can you raise your hand, please? There you go. And then we come back to you guys. Don't worry about it.
Yes. Hello, I'm Pat Salas, and I'm an entrepreneur. Supported by I come from the Barcelona location. And my experience I will share with all of you tomorrow morning. But just for now, it's fine that it's, of course, it has been a really support in kind and cash also. And now we are involved in a financial loan because the loan that we have been granted by the public government. And we also applied for the investment fund by KIC, that this is also another way to get funds in maybe not the seed capital, but in the first stages of your track record or your company. And the experience has been really good. So I don't know, just to introduce this point, and if somebody wants to know more about this.
Can you explain your venture real quick? And had you ever heard about EIT and KICs before you did this?
Well, in fact, we started maybe 1 year and a half before. That we got notice about the KIC was in just prorated, and I'm coming from Barcelona, and one of the co-locations are there, so we are quite close by, and this is a reason that I get knowledge about them. And after the assessment from technical and business side, we agreed when the governor was to take part of the company. And since then, we have been incubated in Barcelona co-location. And well, the experience has been very very good deal, I would say, for most parts, because for us as entrepreneurs, the support is absolutely incredible, because you can be in front of our customers that I did not explain it before, but our customers are the electric retailers. So this is a huge customer. It is difficult to try to find a way to meet them. And KIC has supported to meet them.
But how would this differ from like an accelerator, like Viva or so in Spain?
For me, the best or the unique value proposition is that they have a really business approach. So they take part with us in the same goal. And this is for us the absolute difference between KIC and other offers, let's say, or other
Thank you. I think we all want to come and listen to your session now tomorrow. And thank you for speaking up, because when you said that there were no entrepreneurs in the room, I saw sort of a fake hand. Now, we're out of time, unfortunately. But I'll do the same thing as I did in the previous panel. Lots of people here were thinking about starting new KICs. One piece of advice in less than 1 minute. Jari, we start with you.
Okay, my advice from the financial point of view would be that gain and share a common understanding of what you can finance with contribution coming from EIT and what is required as other sources of income before you start making your budget.
Fair enough. Richard?
I'm going to give you a somewhat non-financial piece of advice. I think everything that you heard in the first session is absolutely true. Carl Friedrich said a lot of things, none of which I think any of us would disagree with. We all experienced it. So, having said that, I would urge everybody who's creating a KIC to do two things. Be creative, don't be boring. In all aspects of what you do, it's meant to be an experiment. Don't fear that you might fail. Just have a contingency plan if you do. The other thing is a very personal thing. For those of you who are in teams that are putting KIC bids together, it's a life sentence. Don't think you can just step away. If you really care about this thing that you've created, and if you're successful, then you can't step aside. You have to make this happen. But recognize when your time has come, because creating a thing like this is a process, and just like a spin-out company, there comes a moment when the guy who, or the lady, who thought the idea up and feels that she or he owns it, actually needs somebody else to make it commercial. You have to be very conscious and recognize when your skills are maybe not as necessary as they were at the beginning.
Very nice. Thank you, Stan.
Yeah, a few points from my side. First of all, the experience that we have had is to make very clear what the governance of your KIC is going to be. So that it is very clear for partners how to structure it, how it's going to work, what will be top down, what will be bottom up, how the whole system is so that I heard this morning the example of energy, where they had external experts involved. Well, indeed, if you don't have that expertise in your partnership, it's important to get that on board, because putting it together takes a while, and once you have it and it is established, you have to live with it.
Very good point. Bart?
I'll piggyback on Stan's comment, because first you have to decide how you would like to structure it, but then you have to live it. So you really have to kind of invest time and money in a proper management structure of the thing, because it can become quite big, and it is a lot of partners. The kind of the management, the managerial part of it is not to be taken too easy.
Excellent, thank you. As chair, let me just add my own 3 points, sort of what I heard. Richard said, you add value to what already exists. I think this is very important, because too much in the EU is reinventing the wheel all the time, coming up with new things. So this aspect of integration is so important, what you rightfully pointed out. This is one thing that I heard, and I'm very impressed with it. Secondly, you appeal, or you work to a broader mission than just sort of the bottom line. And I think this is very important, the educational aspect, working with entrepreneurs, etc. And thirdly, and I do think this is also very different from most EU programs, is really this emphasis on commercialization and bringing it to market. And I think that this is already making a real difference. And again, I can only congratulate you on that. Now, Richard said, be creative and not boring. I would say this is not only true for the KICs, but is in general a good idea in life. With that, I want to say now is the coffee break. Enjoy the coffee break, half an hour. When we come back, we're going to be talking about interesting project portfolios. Thank you.